Going to this one now, the Sekunjalo Group says it will urgently approach the Competition Tribunal to seek the body's intervention on what the group views as the bank's abuse of their dominance in the sector. And this follows a sequence of events triggered by a move by South Africa's three major banks, FNB, Absa and Nedbank, to cut ties with the group. Now, Sekunjalo subsequently approached the Western Cape High Court to stop Nedbank, which was the latest of the three, to close the accounts of the group's related companies. But last week, the court dismissed the interdict. Sekunjalo Chairman Dr. Iqbal Surve joins us now for his side of the story following our interview here on Morning Live earlier in the week with a journalist from Amabungane. Mr. Surve, thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Sakina, and thank you so much for having me on your program. Really appreciate the opportunity to respond.
Indeed, Dr. Surve, because, a lot has been written, a lot has been said. You have embarked as Sekunjalo on a number of legal actions against the country's biggest banks. Please tell us more about what has been going on from your side.
Sakina, if I may start off by saying the group is about 85 companies of scale, 8,500 employees, revenues of about 8.5 billion a year, and about 40,000 dependents. So what has happened is over the last while, quite a lot of our detractors have written negative things about us, most of which is untrue. We've summoned them, sent them letters of demand, etc. Now, the banks have used this negative news, and this is all the banks have used, by the way. Not a single illegal transaction. They've studied tens of thousands of transactions of all of our companies. They've used this negative news as a basis to say it's a reputational risk. Now, of course, that's crazy. So what we've done is that we have taken all these banks to the Equality Court, and we filed a major summons against them in the Equality Court on the grounds of racial discrimination, on the grounds of violating our constitutional rights, on the grounds of many other grounds. Plus, we have taken them to the Competitions Commission for collusion because they've acted in sequence. Now, there's no doubt that this decision by the banks has a political origin. The banks have colluded together. They're part of the establishment. Sekunjalo has been around for 25 years, and as a group, we've never once been found wanting. There's been no court case against us. There's been no charges ever. We've acted with integrity. We have 3 public companies. We're 95% black, 75% African in our leadership structures. We are truly transformed. Of course, what is our sin? Our sin is that we own independent media. And independent media has exposed corruption in the current government. It has also not toed the line insofar as these corporates are concerned. These corporates are involved in extensive corruption, as has been shown in the state capture report, like Nedbank itself. For instance, the Zondo Commission has said they should be prosecuted. They've said that they must pay back the money. Similarly, Investec has been involved in massive global tax fraud. I mean, this is all these banks, by the way, have been involved in fraud in terms of rigging the rand. I mean, this is something which is treasonous to the country. Now, we have not hesitated to put all of this across. Now, I challenge anybody, not a single bank in any of their papers has shown one single transaction of wrongdoing or irregularity on the part of Sekunjalo. All that these banks have done. Sorry, go ahead, yes.
I was going to ask, so what reasons were then given to you as Sekunjalo by the banks for these concerns?
So their reasons, you can frame them in 2 ways. The first is they use the party commission report, and I'll come back to that in a second. And the second main reason is negative media. So all the banks use articles that have been published in, for example, Daily Maverick, News 24, and other media houses. Now, we know they've run a campaign against us for almost 3 to 4 years now. And we know that they're trying to undermine our organization. And in fact, if you look at what Mr. Deerwal said on your show the other day, he was a spokesperson for the banks. And one of the reasons why Amabungane is angry against us is because a few years ago, some of the journalists in our titles exposed the fact that the Sam Sol worked for the former apartheid intelligence structures, and he never denied that. And since then, there's been a vendetta against our group by Amabungane itself. But leave that for the moment. The fact is that no bank has shown any irregularity on our part. And the banks are very subjective. So let's take, for instance, the likes of Steinhoff, EOH, Tonguard, Lonman, Bain, McKenzie. These companies all happen to be white. And these companies have actually committed fraud and corruption. These companies have lost this economy more than 200 billion. Not a single bank has closed their accounts. In fact, laughably, the banks say, we are not closing their accounts because these companies have reformed. Now that's very subjective. But they also imply that Sekunjalo must reform. Now, what do they mean by that? They mean that, you know what, you should say that you're guilty of something that you're not guilty of. No court of law has ever come to us. No one has ever come to us and said, not even the banks, by the way, the banks in the court papers themselves say the following. They say, we accept Dr. Surve, Sekunjalo, and your companies. You are not guilty of corruption. You are not guilty of money laundering. You are not guilty of illicit transfer. But you know what? Because of the Supreme Court case in 2010 of Bredenkamp, it gives us the right to close your accounts. Now, they've done this because of a SCA court case that gives any bank, if they don't like the way you look, they don't like your color of your hair, they don't like the way you smell, they don't like where you stay, they don't like your language, they have the right. Now, we have challenged that right on the basis that that right is unconstitutional. And one important development, Sakina, which happened this morning, and I was so glad to read that, is a Johannesburg law firm within 2 to 3 weeks has gotten 6,000 black individuals and families and professionals and entrepreneurs that are now suing these banks, that are joining our application against these banks. I think there's going to be 100,000 black people where the banks have overcharged them on mortgage rates, have repossessed the homes and sold them. The other day, one home was sold for 10 Rand, are repossessing their cars, are not giving black businesses, professionals any loans. So I think what's going to happen, Sekunjalo's case in the Equality Court is going to be joined by at least 100,000 black people in this country. And what's going to happen, the banks are going to have to pay to us and to them reparations of at least 100 billion, in my view, because what's happening now, for the first time, a black group of substance with integrity that's operated absolutely with integrity for 25 years is taking on these massive establishment banks that are a cartel that work together against people.
And Dr. Surve, why do you think that stories of alleged corruption have been so persistently following you?
There have been no stories of alleged corruption, Sakina. Let's be factual. There's one transaction which the Party Commission looked at. In 25 years, we have won many awards for sustainability, governance, excellence, black excellence. We have 3 public companies on the stock exchange. What happens with these detractors of ours? There's a story out there. They take my picture, my name, and they put it on it. But show me one evidence of corruption. Even the Party Commission itself said, and I'm quoting now, it said, no PIC employee, executive, whatever, received any benefit from Sekunjalo. We have more than 200 companies in our group. The PIC has only invested in 3 of those companies. This nonsense of corruption. If there's corruption, don't you think by now law enforcement authorities would have charged us? Don't you think someone would have taken us to court? Of course there isn't corruption. You see, this is what the detractors cannot stand.
Hence, I'm asking, what is behind it? Why do these stories keep following you? And you know, as an example, one of the ones on the books right now, the Sizwe Africa IT group deal. with the Department of Education in the Eastern Cape. And this, of course, a subsidiary of AO Technology Solutions. And they are alleged to have secured a 160 million rand e-learning service contract with the Eastern Cape Provincial Department of Education. And that is then alleged to have overlooked, at least the procurement processes is alleged to have been overlooked. And now you have people in the Eastern Cape flagging that. And the allegation now is that the Eastern Cape Department of Education awarded that contract, which was initially worth 160 million, with an additional 404 million rand, and this to lease e-tablets to run e-learning services. So, and I'm just citing this as an example of what I'm trying to ask you. Why do you think these things keep following you?
I'm so happy that you've put that particular transaction on the table. I'll tell you why I'm happy. First of all, we only own 31% of IO. Secondly, IO is an investor. I don't sit on the board of IO. Now, the first time I ever heard of the Sizwe transaction was when it was announced in the media, and my name and my photograph was associated with that. Subsequently, the Daily Dispatch apologized to me. You can check this. We send them a letter of demand and summons. But let's get the facts around that transaction. After I heard about it, I inquired from the Sizwe management. This is what they told me. Sizwe had that contract with the Eastern Cape government before we had acquired Sizwe. Secondly, the issue was not about corruption. The issue was that CETA and the Eastern Cape, the dispute was between CETA and the Eastern Cape government, not between Sizwe and the Eastern Cape government. And the issue was who has authority. Is it CETA or is it the Eastern Cape government? If you look at the judgment there is no suggestion whatsoever of corruption. But you see, you've raised this because our detractors have made it seem like there's something irregular about that transaction. But I want to make the point again. Firstly, I was not involved in that. Neither was Sekunjalo. We had no idea about it. The first time we heard about it is when it was in the media. So how in heaven's name do you take us as a group? You know, Sekunjalo has got, as I said to you, 200 companies in pharmaceuticals, biotechnology, ICT, 30 companies, e-commerce. What has that got to do with everything else? There are 8,500 employees. How do you just decide you're going to tarnish the reputation of our group based on one? You see, again, if there was something criminal, then they must charge those people wherever they are. If they are management of Sizwe, individuals, they must charge them. The point of the matter is not a single one of our 8,500 employees has ever been charged. All of this is pure speculation. All of this is gossip. It's allegation, and it's designed to tarnish our and my reputation. Look, Amapungani, when I bought independent media, they tried with Mail and Guardian to stop us doing the transaction. They've never forgiven me for buying a media house in this country. Now, I always say to my friends, you can do everything in this country. Don't try and buy a media house. Now, our media house is very critical about lots of things. We exposed the PPE corruption. And as you know, Sakina, for about a month, all the other media said it was fake news. We showed there was 32 billion of corruption. Doctors and nurses in our public hospitals, poor people, you know, money was being taken away from them during the time of COVID. Because we've exposed the president's own spokesperson in corruption in this, regrettably, you know, we felt the wrath of the state. We've exposed corruption at Eskom. We've even published the bank statements of the president. Now, we don't do so because we dislike the president. We do so because it's important to know which business people fund our president. Because do they get gratification? Do they get contracts? You see, we're in a democracy. Now, I have been targeted, Sekunjalo has been targeted because we dare to ask these difficult questions through our journalists and in our media. At the end of the day, I challenge a single bank to show one illegal transaction. Let me just also tell you the pure arrogance of these banks, right? We're a corporate in 25 years. We have 8.5 billion revenues per annum. These banks tell us what we must do with our money. Now that's absurd. They don't tell Johan Rupert, Christo Wiese, Jannie Maton, or any other successful white businessman what they should do with the money. In fact, the reason why we fund our businesses for growth, for job creation and employment is precisely because 12 years ago, by the way, these banks refused to give us credit as a large black organization. And they refused to give us credit because I am very outspoken about transformation,
Dr.
about
Surve,
economic empowerment.
we are unfortunately out of time, but I have to quickly ask you. So you are approaching the tribunal for the banks to restore your accounts and working with them. But what would be your next move if you don't succeed in this regard?
Sakina, the tragedy of all of this is 8,500 employees and 40,000 dependents, right? We are a South African company. I'm a South African. I've invested 6 billion into my businesses over the last 25 years. I could have taken that money for myself. I didn't. I created jobs. For me, the sad thing about all of this is what's going to happen to these people. The banks are very powerful. And I know I'm up against the establishment, in particular the white establishment. I just hope and pray that in our court application, in the Equality Court interdict, and with the tribunal, that they will investigate these banks. You know, if there was something that we had done wrong, I can understand you punishing me personally, or maybe even Sekunjalo Holdings. We've done nothing wrong. But why give collective punishment? This smells and tastes like apartheid. I'm so sorry, but it is very sad. I will fight for my employees.
Let me park you there, Mr. Surve. Dr. Surve, let's just hold it there. I'll give you 2 more minutes just to wrap it up, but we have to say goodbye to our SABC 2 viewers at this point. So thanks so much for being with us this morning. And of course, also, please be safe. There's Weekend Morning Live tomorrow and on Sunday, but we'll see you again on Monday. But please take care until then. Still 1 more hour of Morning Live on SABC News. Well, thanks so much for staying with us into the third and final hour of Morning Live on SABC News as we continue this conversation with Sekunjalo's Dr. Iqbal Surve. So, Dr. Surve, I was still asking you about what would be your next move if the tribunal, if you're not successful in your approach to the tribunal, and also, of course, the kind of implications that Sekunjalo could face if all else fails.
Sakina, you know, I believe in karma. Maybe I'm too much of a utopian person, but I believe if you've acted with integrity, done nothing wrong, ultimately things will come right. And I believe the good karma of our employees, of our companies, the fact that we're one of only a few companies to have black companies listed on the stock market, you know, which is very unusual. I think it will be okay. I'm confident that the Equality Court, although these matters are sub judice, it's going to find in our favor. Our case is very strong. We've demonstrated racial discrimination by these banks. We've demonstrated with the Competitions Commission how the banks have colluded. Look, there's an attempt to shut a black firm and a black conglomerate. You know what's happened here, Sakina, is that we've grown too big. We've grown to independent as a black company. And this is not what the establishment wants in this country. White business are greedy. They are monopolies. They want to keep everything for themselves. They want to shut out. I want to give you one simple example, you know, that Dierwald raised. He spoke about 2 IO directors that were sanctioned by the JSC. Now, he says, he tries to make a point that he tries to create the impression that they did something wrong. These are 2 young African graduates. I mean, incredibly smart people. One with an LLB, the other with a BA, BCom, both with the MBAs now, busy with the MBAs. Both of them were given the opportunity by us to serve on the boards of IO and on the committees of IO. Now, if we don't give young Africans, graduates, clever young people, the opportunity to sit on these boards, who is going to give it to them? White companies don't give it to them. They give people who have no degrees, no qualifications, the opportunity to sit on boards, and then they go and commit fraud. Now, what the JSC does is they come to these young people and they say to them, you are not qualified enough to sit on this audit committee, whatever. They're afraid. They intimidate them, they bully them, and they say to them, you must say you were not competent, you must say you were not experienced. Of course they were not experienced enough, because the whole point of appointing to them to these boards is so that they get experience, but they do have undergraduate and postgraduate degrees at major institutions, universities. Now, what are we coming to in this world where the JSE targets these two young, one woman African, one male African, Mike and Mbuso, when they don't target the white people that have committed fraud in EOH, Steinhoff, Tongaat, Mackenzie Bay, all these other companies. So I'm just giving you an example.
Let me just be clear. In terms of you saying that they are being targeted, what exactly do you mean by that in terms of what the JSE said and what is alleged to have happened and why that is them being targeted?
The JSE has targeted them to make them scapegoats in order to bring about negative news. And do you know how many letters the JSE has sent 3 public companies in which Sekunjalo has invested in over the last 3 years? The JSE has sent them 200 plus letters. They have intimidated our management, our directors. We are on the verge, by the way, just for your information, of actually issuing a summons against the JSE, again in the Quality Court for harassment, intimidation, and for racism, quite frankly. Now, this is like apartheid, right? Because they're using their power. These are Afrikaners at the head of the JSE that are doing this. They have not done this to white companies that have actually done something wrong. Where have we done something wrong? They cannot produce any evidence anywhere. They have investigated this group beyond investigation. Even the PIC and the party said this group has done nothing wrong. But of course, let's take the example of the FECA, which Deewald mentioned. It is laughable. We complained, we wrote a letter to the FSCA to say, investigate white asset management companies, white hedge funds. We gave them the names of the people. We said these people are bringing down the share prices of our group. What happens next? They come and raid our offices. We take them to the court on constitutional grounds. Now we're still going to issue damages against them, a damages claim against them. This is all part of a coordinated campaign.
So why did they say they were raiding your offices? On the basis of what? What were they trying to find?
So Sakina, we wrote to them. It's very important to understand that. We wrote to them and said, we want you to investigate the share trades after the listing of IO and into our other companies as well. They were silent on this completely. Nothing happened. And then the next thing, and I went public, by the way, where I said a whistleblower inside Treasury told us this was orchestrated by Ismail Mamayat and by Pravin Gordhan, and even the president. When I called the president, he called me actually to deny it. And I even spoke to the Minister of Finance, Tito Mboweni, who was very angry at the time, who said they did this without his authority. It is clearly political. And in fact, what had happened is we now have a whistleblower from inside the FSCA and inside the Treasury that has given us more information of how this was orchestrated to tarnish our reputation and our name. So,
but what were they looking for, Dr. Surve? What did they say they were looking for?
This is the funny thing, right? This is the strange thing. They claim they were looking for share trades. Now, we complained. Don't you think the logical thing is to send an email to us and say, you've just complained, can you give us share trades? Now, of course, we know for a fact that it was nonsense. They were, I mean, really, it was just complete. Look, it's all part of a strategy to undermine us. Regrettably so. I never thought, after fighting for my freedom with other liberators, I'd ever get to the point where we are now the subject of state tyranny, state regulators, and the establishment. I fought this establishment during apartheid. I'm going to fight them now. Look, I'm sad that my employees and 40,000 dependents have to suffer, but I will use every resource I have to fight and show that tyranny, dictatorship, racism, violating of our constitutional rights will not go unpunished. I am predicting confidently these banks are going to have to pay my employees and I and all black people tens of billions of rands, if not hundreds of billions in damages. In fact, if I am there, I would issue cautionaries on the JSE, because if 6,000 people could join as a class action our case in the equality case within 3 weeks, I can predict by the end of this year, before the case gets to court, 100,000 black people are going to join us in the case against these banks. It is time that someone stands up to these banks. I am prepared to stand up to them.
Speaking of issuing cautionaries to the JSE, with regard to what happened when Absa actually alerted Sekunjalo about their impending action to sever ties, did you inform the JSE of that particular action at the time?
Sakinas, Absa did not alert Sekunjalo. Sekunjalo is a private holding company, and this is where there's confusion. There is no such thing as a Sekunjalo Group. There are companies in which Sekunjalo has invested. Sekunjalo has invested in 3 public companies, the main one being AEI. There was no need for a cautionary at that time because those companies had other bank accounts. So you only issue a cautionary if you have no other bank account. So Mr. Dierwald lies. In fact, we are sending Mr. Dierwald, what's his surname, van Rensburg, part of these, Stratcom initiatives, a summons today, or if not today, on Monday, for the lies and defamation that he told on your You see, these people lie, but they have an agenda. Look at who are their funders. Their funders include the banks. If you look at one of the trusts that's the funders, it's one of the people that are big shareholders in these banks. The banks sponsor them. So we expect them to have a smear campaign against myself. Listen, they've smeared me since I bought independent media in 2013. All that's happened since 2018 is that this has just increased. If there's any issues, any illegality, any wrongdoing. Now, let me also make one point clear, right? When I engaged these banks, I said to them, you're speculating. You have nothing. You have no proof of nothing. You are simply making wild allegations. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to appoint a retired judge to look into your so-called allegations. I did that 3 months ago. I appointed a retired judge whose report will come out before the end of February. And I said, in terms of reference to this judge, if you find anything wrong in our group, I will make that report public, and I personally will charge any individual in this organization at any police station should there be something we have done wrong. And that was the only basis on which the judge took on this brief. He said, if I find something wrong, then I want you to act on it and make it public, even if it's against yourself. I said, I welcome that because I have operated with integrity for 25 years since I left medicine as a doctor for 10 years, and I came into business and I built up this group with my colleagues to become the most transformed investment conglomerate. You know what is my problem? The problem they have with me, Sakina, they don't like to see black success and black excellence and black transformation. That is an anathema to these people. Apartheid still exists in their minds, regrettably, and now it's existing in the actions of these banks and of the establishment, and regrettably of the media. These detractors, let's take, for example, no one knows who funds the likes of Daily Maverick. Why have they remained quiet? And I can tell you, I know who funds them. I can tell you who funds Amabungani.
Who funds
I can
them?
tell you who funds News 24.
Who funds
them? Wait, I will tell you in time to come. Let us tell you at the right time. Leave it to my journalists. But we are going to expose all of this. News 24, listen, let's be honest about it. This is an apartheid media house. Why do I say that? Henny van Vieren's book says there's a section where P.W. Botha speaks to the chairman of Naspers that owns News 24. They say, if you support apartheid, we give you the contracts in the state. These people all existed. Winnie Mandela said, the number 2 in Stratcom told her that these journalists are embedded. They now find themselves in Daily Maverick, they find themselves in Amabungani, News 24, and other media organizations. Now, I have fought them during apartheid, and I will fight them today. And they've taken on the wrong person. You know why I'm fighting them? I'm fighting them for my 8,500 employees and 40,000 dependents. for black people in this country,
So,
for economic transformation and for equality.
as
and
we
for
start to wrap this up, Dr. Surve, so those 8,500 employees, with the threat from the banks, and of course, when Absa fired their salvo and closing your accounts with them, you took that particular matter to court. You were not successful on that score. So what makes you think that you will be successful this time around?
Sakina, we did not take that matter to court. There was one company in the group, it was Premier, that filed papers against Absa, and we withdrew because Absa gave Premier Group 6 months, and Premier had other bank accounts. There was only one company that took FNB to court, and that was Aya, and the judge threw that out on a technicality. The judge said the matter was not urgent. He did not look at the merits. In this case, in the Cape High Court, when we took Nedbank to court, the judge, if you look at the written judgment, actually found largely in our favor. The judge said, Nedbank's conduct is caving. We have a very good case over here. And the judge inferred in his written judgment, had this case been in the Equality Court, I would more than likely have found in your favor. So what the judge said is, this is the High Court. You have filed your major papers in the Equality Court. Please take this interdict to the Equality Court. And so on the advice of the judge, we filed the interdict in the Equality Court on Monday, and that interdict is going to be heard on the 10th of March. But if you look at Judge Francis's written judgment, he is caving about the conduct of Nedbank in trying to delay matters, obfuscate matters, in trying to raise technical points, running. You see, what these banks were hoping to do is, by shutting down our accounts, they thought we would have no funds to take them on to the Equality Court and Competitions Commission. They're wrong. I've invested 6 billion of my own money in the businesses, and I will continue to fight these banks on behalf. And if 1 million South Africans, black South Africans, want to join me, the Johannesburg lawyers have set up a website, an email address. If the banks have done bad things to you and your families and repossessed your homes, your cars, please join that law firm. I personally am committing from my personal funds 500 million towards fighting these banks. These banks are going to pay reparations to black South Africans for discrimination, for charging them higher interest rate. It is not correct that if you're white, you get low interest rate and then you steal money. Black South Africans who work hard are being penalized on high interest rate. Their homes are being repossessed, and the banks are selling them to their friends, like for 10 Rand and 100 Rand. And poor black South Africans have to then pay this. And this is not right. Black entrepreneurs get no funding from these banks. Black professionals get no funding. I personally am going to lead the fight against these banks. They can try and tarnish my reputation. You can bring 100 Deervalds to the table. The fact is, I've never done anything wrong in my life, and neither has anyone in my group with a company integrity. And that's why we are strong in fighting these neo-apartheid Nazis.
Okay, just a final question then to bottom line at all the Eastern Cape story that we spoke about with Sizwe, the High Court in Bisho, they suspended that contract. Where is that process at the moment? Because I think you said earlier on, you said something about acquiring a stake in Sizwe. What year did you say, Mr. Surve? In 2018.
Yeah, so just to be correct, and let me explain it. So Aya acquired a stake in Sizwe in 2018. Sizwe, before Aya acquired it, not we, had a contract with the Eastern Cape government, I think from 2014 already. This contract was on top of that contract. And the issue, again, I want to make is not an issue of corruption. According to my understanding of the court papers, what is at issue here is that CETA says any ICT contract in the entire country must go via CETA. The Eastern Cape government said that this ICT contract is on top of another ICT contract. CETA took the Eastern Cape government to court. They did not take Sizwe to court. And the fight is between two government departments about the authority. But Sizwe provided with MTN, with Standard Bank, with Absa, they provided tablets to learners during COVID because rich people's kids can get tablets and computers and during COVID learn from home. The poor from rural communities and urban. So there's nothing wrong. Sizwe, in fact, invested with MTN, who provided the data. I mean, this was a contract. They bought tablets from Samsung. They set up centers of teachers all over the province so that learners could do their matric. And I mean, what's wrong with that?
But were the prices inflated? Do you think, looking at those prices right now, Dr. Surve, that those were the best prices?
That was not the issue in that case.
No, I'm just asking you.
I don't know about the Sizwe contract because honestly, I'm not on the board of Sizwe. I'm not on the board of IU. I'm not on the board of AI. Those questions should be directed to the Sizwe management.
Okay,
and the point of the matter is,
ask them.
I can only tell you what I've read in the court papers and what I've read in the media, because really I've got nothing. But the point is, why do you use that contract to paint 85 companies? We effectively own 20% of that company. So how is it possible?
I'm just asking about it because, as you yourself indicated, it is out there. But also just with regard to the PIC, in terms of where things stand with the PIC servicing the repayment of that particular facility, how's that going?
Sorry, Sakina, that is a myth. That is a complete myth and absolute nonsense. No Sekunjalo company has ever borrowed money from the PIC. The PIC has never invested in Sekunjalo Holdings. There is nothing to service. I don't know where this nonsense comes from. IU was an investment by the PIC. The PIC invested and had a loan with independent media, which was converted into shares in another structure. So I don't know where this nonsense comes from. Let's be very clear over here. This is just a lot of media, what do you call this, propaganda that we're dealing with. These are not facts. If there were facts, right, if in fact there was something to that effect, surely by now the PIC would have done something about it. They haven't. The reality is, you know what I love about what you're doing, Sakina? You're raising these issues which have been in the public domain, and it's pure, it's like Goebbels.
Yeah, indeed, because you are here, so we can ask you. But we unfortunately have to wrap. But I have to ask you about the Tembisa 10 in closing. Where's that story at?
Can I tell you what you must watch? Watch episodes 6 and 7 that's about to be released. We show where the mother delivered, we show the hospitals, we show the doctors involved, and we show the anti-trafficking ring involved. So we've kept the best for last, right? And I'm very happy to come back on your show once you've seen the full 8 series episodes. It's on YouTube. So I really encourage you to watch it. And but what is important, again, we've exposed trafficking of babies in Gauteng hospitals, R1 billion a year industry. Poor black mothers' babies are taken from them. Some are used as surrogates. Please watch the entire series. I really want you to. And I'm happy.
We will do that. We'll do that. But to bottom line it, were there 10 babies? Were they born? Did South Africa at some point have that record?
They were, and you'll see that in the series. And regrettably, the doctors involved are mostly from West Africa, and it all gets announced in the next couple of days.
Dr. Surve, we have to leave it there, unfortunately. But thank you so much for your time this morning. And as you can see, much being said on both sides. We'll keep an eye on these developments, and we'll see where it goes. We'll keep you up to speed.